Welcome back, guys. Before we start, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and family. Also, can you please tell me from where you're watching? Thanks. So this happened a while back, fall of 2013 to be exact. I was 26 and kinda stuck. I'd just lost my job at this small engine repair shop in Kansas City. One day it was there. The next day the doors were locked and my last paycheck bounced. No notice, no nothing. I didn't have much saved. Rent was due. And I was too proud to ask anyone for help. So I started looking for whatever gig I could find, even the weird ones. Craigslist, Facebook groups, community bulletin boards. I searched everywhere. That's when I found it. A short ad, super simple. Help needed on rural property. Must know trucks, room and meals included. It was posted by a guy named Mason, and the job was in a place called Cold Hollow, a tiny town up north in the Minnesota woods. Ever heard of it? Me neither. But it was remote. The guy seemed normal in his emails, and I figured, it's just a few days. I fix the truck, get fed, crash in a room, then bounce with some money in my pocket. So I packed my tools, grabbed some clothes, and drove 6 hours through back roads and endless pine trees. By the time I got there, the sun was setting, and the woods were already casting long shadows. The house was old, a 2-story farmhouse with peeling white paint and a wraparound porch that creaked in the wind. Behind it was a big open field that just faded into forest. No neighbors, no traffic, no sounds except wind and the occasional crow. Mason came out to meet me. He looked like someone's tired uncle, probably late 50s, gray beard, flannel shirt, hands like sandpaper. Friendly but quiet. He didn't say much. Just showed me where I'd be sleeping. A small guest room with a creaky bed and a single window that looked out over the back field. And told me I could start on the truck in the morning. No cell service, no Wi-Fi. Just the woods and whatever was out there. That night was uneventful. Mostly. I unpacked, made a sandwich, and sat on the porch for a bit. Around midnight, I heard a soft brushing sound against the side of the house. Not like branches. More like something dragging along the wall. Then a sharp snap, like twigs breaking underfoot. I froze, listened, waited. Nothing. I told myself it was just a raccoon or deer. Country stuff. But I still kept the light on all night. The next morning I looked over the truck. It was an old Dodge pickup, half rusted and clearly hadn't run in years. The wiring under the hood was chewed up, battery was dead, belts cracked. It needed serious work. I made a list and asked Mason where the nearest parts store was. He said, about 40 minutes west. Take the dirt road, keep left at the fork. The rest of the day was fine. I got the parts, came back, worked in the barn. Mason mostly kept to himself. Chopped wood, did some minor repairs around the house. He didn't ask questions and I didn't press. That night, though, things got weird. I was in the living room just flipping through a dusty old book I found on the shelf. It was close to midnight. The house was quiet, too quiet. Then I heard footsteps on the porch. Slow. Heavy. One step at a time, creaking toward the window behind me. I turned around fast. The porch light flickered once, then went out completely. I didn't see anything on it first, then I caught it. Just for a second, a shadow at the edge of the yard. Tall. Still. Watching. I stood up, moved closer to the window. Gone. I didn't sleep at all. Just lay in bed listening for sounds. The brushing came back around 3 a.m., soft, dragging movements along the siding, then a low thump, like something tapping under the window frame. In the morning, I asked Mason if there were coyotes or bears in the area. He looked up from his coffee and said, just deer mostly. Maybe a fox or two, why? I told him I thought I saw something. He just nodded, didn't say a word, and went outside to chop more wood. The third day I worked from morning till dusk. I got the battery replaced, started rewiring things, even managed to get the engine to cough to life for a second. I figured I could finish everything the next day and leave early. By sunset, Mason had gone into his room. I ate, locked the doors and windows, turned on every light I could find, and camped out in the living room again. This time I sat with a hammer in my lap. Just after midnight, the porch creaked again. Same slow footsteps. Then tapping, soft, rhythmic. Tap, tap, tap right at the window. I stood up and stared. My heart was thudding so loud I could barely hear. That's when I saw it, a face right outside the glass. Pale as a sheet, gaunt, eyes like black pits. No emotion. Just staring. We locked eyes. I didn't move. Neither did it. Then, without warning, it tilted its head slowly, like a dog hearing a strange noise, and stepped back. That's when I saw the rest of it. It was tall. Way too tall, almost touched the porch roof. Its limbs were long and crooked, like it had too many joints in the wrong places. The thing walked backward into the yard, silent, graceful, wrong. I ran to the door and deadbolted it. That night, I stayed up with the lights on, hammer clutched tight, waiting for the sun. When morning came, I ran outside to check. There were no footprints. No broken branches. No signs of anyone, or anything. Mason was already out by the barn, stacking wood like nothing had happened. I walked over and told him everything. The footsteps, the face, the thing in the yard. He didn't even blink. Probably just your nerves, he said. People get jumpy out here in the woods. Long nights, quiet air, and plays tricks on the brain. I told him it wasn't my imagination, that I saw it clear as day. He just looked at me and said, "Nobody ever comes out here. Nobody can." Then he turned and kept stacking wood. I didn't say another word. I finished the truck, packed my things, and drove out of Cold Hollow like the road was on fire. On the way home, I kept checking the rearview mirror, expecting to see that pale face again. But the road stayed empty. To this day, I don't know what I saw. A ghost? Some creature that lives in those deep woods? A hallucination brought on by isolation? All I know is I'll never go back. And I don't take odd jobs from strangers anymore. Especially not the ones way out in the woods, far from anyone who could hear you scream. This all happened back in the summer of 2013. I was 20 years old, broke, and trying to figure out life after dropping out of community college. My best friend's cousin, Jamie, knew I was looking for work and sent me a Craigslist ad she'd seen. Some couples needed someone to watch their place for a week while they went to visit family out of town. It was just a simple house-sitting job. No pets, no chores, really. Just check the locks, water the plants, and be around in case anything weird happens. The house was in a place called Miller's Hollow, which I had never heard of. When I looked it up, it barely showed up on the map. Just one road in and out, surrounded by woods and hills. But the pay was good, $300 for the week, and I figured, why not? I talked to the owners, a couple named Lena and Tom Ridgway, over the phone. They sounded nice enough. Lena said they'd leave instructions on the kitchen counter and hide a spare key under a fake rock by the porch. She did mention that the place was a little remote, about 25 minutes from the nearest gas station. That should have been a red flag, but I just thought it meant peace and quiet. I showed up on a Sunday afternoon. It was hot. The sky was gray with those thick clouds that look like they're trying to decide whether to rain or not. The house was this old white 2-story farmhouse with peeling paint, a wraparound porch, and an old red barn off to the side. There were trees everywhere, tall, skinny ones that creaked in the wind even when it wasn't windy. Just like she said, the key was under the fake rock. I let myself in. It was nicer inside than I expected, clean, a little old-fashioned but cozy. There were sticky notes on the fridge with the Wi-Fi password, alarm code, and some emergency numbers. The whole place smelled faintly of lavender and wood polish. The first day was easy. I unpacked my bag upstairs, made a sandwich, and spent most of the afternoon watching Netflix on my laptop. That night I locked every door and window before going to bed in the guest room. The air upstairs was colder than it should have been. No AC, just fans, but still. It felt like someone had opened a window. I checked. All were shut. I told myself it was just an old house. Old houses make weird noises. They creak, settle, shift around. But still, that first night I slept with the lamp on. Day 2. Nothing weird happened during the day. I walked around the property, took some pictures of the barn, watered the plants on the porch. The barn door was padlocked shut, and something about that made me feel relieved. I didn't want to know what was inside. Later that night, I was brushing my teeth when I heard something. A crunching sound like footsteps on gravel, the kind you hear when someone walks slowly down a driveway. I peeked out the bathroom window. Nothing. Still, my gut felt tight. I stood there with my toothbrush in hand, just listening, and then I heard it again. Crunch. Crunch. But slower now. Like someone was walking in circles. I leaned over the sink and spit, then crept to the upstairs hallway. The lights were off except for the glow from the front porch. I didn't see anyone, but I swear I felt like I was being watched. Like someone was just out of sight, standing still, staring up at the house. Day 3. That morning around 10:30 I saw someone. A man was walking up the long gravel driveway. He was wearing old jeans, a black windbreaker, and a dirty baseball cap pulled low. He looked like he was in his 60s. I was in the kitchen making coffee and nearly dropped the mug when I spotted him. He didn't wave. He didn't smile. He just kept walking up to the front door like he belonged there. When he knocked, I only opened the door halfway with the chain still on. "Morning," he said, real casual. "Just saw a car here and figured I'd check in. Folks don't usually stay long." I told him I was house-sitting for the Ridgeways. He nodded and glanced toward the barn. Then he said, "Sometimes people need help out here. You never know what's in the woods," and he walked away, no car. Just headed back down the road and disappeared into the trees. I texted Lena, "Hey, do you have a neighbor around here?" "A guy came by this morning." Almost an hour later, she replied, "No, that's weird. No one lives close by. Closest neighbors are an elderly couple about 2 miles out. They don't walk." "Did he give a name?" I said no. She told me to keep the doors locked and let her know if anything else happened. That night was different. I left the porch light on. I checked the locks twice. Still, I woke up sometime after 2 a.m. to a sound that made my blood run cold. A soft rattle. Metal on metal. Like someone jiggling a doorknob gently, slowly. I sat up in bed, barely breathing. The sound came again. This time I could tell it was the back door. I grabbed my phone, no signal again, and crept into the hallway, keeping the lights off. From the top of the stairs, I could just make out the edge of the kitchen. I couldn't see the door, but I could hear someone moving outside. Not walking, more like dragging something. A slow scrape on the wood, then silence. I stood there frozen, heart pounding in my ears. After a minute, I ran back to the bedroom, moved to the front of the house where the signal was a little stronger, and called the sheriff. They said they'd send someone, but it would take time. Miller's Hollow was out in the sticks. I waited in the front room, clutching a fireplace poker, watching the front and back like a hawk. Just before 3 a.m., headlights pulled up the driveway. 2 deputies showed up. I told them everything. One walked the property while the other asked me questions. A few minutes later, the first deputy returned with a strange look on his face. There were footprints, he said, leading out of the woods all the way to the back door. The ground's soft, you can see him clear. Then he said something that made my stomach flip. We also found someone near the edge of the field. Just standing there, he wasn't holding a flashlight, no phone. Just standing alone in the dark. When they approached him, he didn't run. He said he was just walking. Claimed he lived nearby. They asked for ID. He had none. They asked for his name. He gave one, but it didn't match anything. Not in their records, not with any nearby address, so they brought him to the front of the house to see if I recognized him. It was the same man. Same hat. Same jacket. Same blank stare. He wouldn't look at me. Just stood there by the patrol car with his hands in his pockets like he'd done nothing wrong. He said, "Just wanted to check in. See if you need anything." That's all he said. The deputies took him in for more questioning. One stayed back with me. We walked the property. He showed me where the prints led in from the woods and where they stopped right at the door. There were no prints going back. Before he left, he asked if I wanted to stay somewhere else. I said no. I had already locked every door and window. I didn't want to leave the place empty. He gave me a direct number and told me to call if anything else happened. I didn't sleep. I just sat there on the couch, fireplace poker in hand, waiting for the sky to lighten. The next morning, Lena called. She had already spoken to the sheriff and apologized over and over. She offered to end the house sitting early, but I said I'd stay. I don't know why. Maybe I didn't want to look like a coward. But when that week was up, I packed my things, got in my car, and left. I didn't even stop for gas until I was 2 towns away. I never went back to Miller's Hollow, and I never found out who that man really was, but I still wonder, if the police hadn't shown up when they did, what would have happened if that back door had been unlocked? Hey, so, this is gonna sound weird, but I need to tell someone. Maybe if I say it all out loud, it'll make more sense. Or maybe someone else has been through something like this. I moved in with my cousin Ben back in October of 2022. He had this beat-up trailer out in the woods near a little town called Ridgway, Missouri. He'd gotten it cheap from some guy who moved to Florida and wanted to get rid of it fast. I should have known that was a red flag. The place was quiet. Like, too quiet. At first, I figured I was just not used to it. I'd lived in the city my whole life where there's always noise. But this was the kind of quiet that presses in on you, like the woods are listening. From day one, I felt like something was watching. Not all the time, but enough to keep me on edge. It wasn't like some horror movie vibe where you feel threatened, though. It felt more like something was there, just hiding like it was waiting for the right moment to say hello. At first, it was small stuff. I'd hear light tapping at night, just 3 little knocks, always in the same spot near the back door. Sometimes the kitchen light would be on when I knew I'd turned it off. One morning I found every single cabinet door wide open. Nothing missing, nothing broken, just open. Like someone had been looking for something. I kept brushing it off. You're tired, I told myself. You're just adjusting. But then I started seeing things not directly but out of the corner of my eye. A shadow moving across the hallway when no one else was home. A shape that stood just behind the frosted glass of the bathroom door. I'd open it and, of course, nothing would be there. Sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of someone standing near the edge of the woods, tall, unmoving, but when I looked again, gone. Then one night, everything changed. Ben and I were getting ready for bed. He was already under the covers, scrolling through his phone. I went to the kitchen to grab a drink. From the sink, you can see straight down the hallway to our room. As I was filling my glass, I looked up and froze. Someone was standing halfway out of the bedroom, peeking at me from behind the door. Same build as Ben, same messy hair, just standing there, staring, not blinking. I laughed and said, "Real funny, dude," thinking he was trying to scare me. But when I walked back to the room, Ben was still in bed. Same spot, the same blanket pulled up to his chin. He looked up and said, "You good?" I just stood there. My heart was thumping like a drum in my chest. I didn't even answer right away. Finally, I said, "Were you just in the hallway?" He frowned. "No, I've been right here." I didn't sleep much that night. The next day was even weirder. I'd left in the morning to grab groceries and wash some clothes. When I got back, all the shoes from the rack were neatly arranged in a perfect circle on the floor. Not scattered, not chewed on, just placed there one by one like some kind of ritual. Our dog, Lou, was still in his crate. He always is when we're out. But his crate had been moved. I'm not talking about a few inches. It was dragged halfway across the living room and was now pressed up against the kitchen island. That crate's heavy. Lou's a medium-sized beagle. No way he did that alone, and he was shaking. Tail between his legs. Wouldn't even come out until I coaxed him with a treat. That's when I really started to worry. That night, I was heading into the bedroom when I glanced at the closet, and I swear on everything I saw Ben inside. Just standing there, his face partly hidden behind the coats, eyes locked on me. I jumped and called out, "Ben!" but his voice came from behind me. "Yeah?" He stepped out of the bathroom, toothbrush in hand. I turned back to the closet, empty. I didn't even bother sleeping that night. I just sat on the couch, lights on, Lou curled up beside me, both of us too scared to move. The next morning, I told Ben everything. I expected him to laugh it off or call me crazy, but he didn't. He just said, "You've seen it too?" Turns out he'd been hearing knocks since the day he moved in. Once he woke up and saw a figure standing at the end of his bed. It didn't move. Didn't speak. Just watched. Then vanished when he turned the light on. That weekend we decided to smudge the place. I'd used sage before in other apartments when things felt heavy. I opened every window, walked through every room burning sage, saying out loud, "If you don't belong here, you need to leave." At first it felt lighter. The air didn't feel so thick. The silence wasn't so sharp, but it didn't last. A few days later, I was outside with Lou when I noticed something strange. There were handprints on the inside of the bedroom window, small like a child's. The glass was fogged up from the morning chill, and the prints were fresh. But we don't have any kids. No one had been in that room all day. Then Ben's cousin Oliver came to visit. He grew up in Ridgeway and knew the area. When we told him what was going on, he got real quiet. He said, "That trailer used to belong to a guy named Richard Hale. Back in the 80s, his son went missing. The whole town helped search. Cops found nothing. People said he ran off, but others whispered, darker stuff, that the woods took him." Oliver looked at us and said, "They never found a body. Just one of his shoes out by the edge of the trees." I didn't want to believe it, but things kept getting worse. Objects moved. Doors slammed. I started waking up with scratches on my back. Not deep, but fresh. Always 3 lines. Like claws. And then there was the night we found the tape. We'd been cleaning out the storage shed out back, hoping to sell off some junk, when Ben pulled out an old box covered in cobwebs. Inside was a camcorder and a few dusty VHS tapes. One of them was labeled July 1984. We had a player in the living room. We popped it in, static. Then a room appeared. It was our bedroom. Same walls, same window. But it looked older, emptier. A boy sat on the bed. Maybe 10 or 11, just sitting there, no sound, just staring straight at the camera. Then the screen glitched. A shadow slid across the corner. The boy turned his head, like he heard something, then stood up and walked out of frame. The camera stayed on. For a full minute, the room sat empty. Then suddenly it shook like someone bumped it, and the screen went black. We looked at each other. Nobody said a word. Later, we showed the tape to Oliver. He turned pale. "That's Toby Hale," he whispered. "That's the missing kid." We tried to play the tape again the next day, but it was different. The boy wasn't there. The room was empty from the start. The glitch was gone. Nothing happened. It was like the tape knew we'd seen too much. And here's the part that still gives me chills. The night after we watched the tape, I woke up at 3:12 a.m. sharp. Lou was growling. I looked toward the bedroom door, and there in the hallway was a boy. Just standing there, no eyes. Just dark pits, watching. He raised his hand and pointed at me. Then he vanished. I've never felt cold like that before. Not from outside. From inside, my bones were moving out next week. We found someone to take the place. I didn't say anything about the extras. I don't know what's in that trailer. I don't know what it wants. But I don't think it's finished. So if you ever find yourself in Ridgeway, Missouri, and someone offers you a cheap trailer in the woods, don't take it. And if you hear 3 knocks at night, don't answer.